have enough board members here to make some decisions.
Okay.
But Ruthina and Lisa are not coming, and JP's going to be late.
Okay.
And Mitch probably as well. So, for that, I'll turn it over to the...
Yeah, we're excited to welcome Principal Browning and Miss Brown here tonight to talk a little bit about Tate and give you guys an overview of their services. We've always been super proud of the work that Ann and her team does in terms of all things for all kids, and I think you'll see that come through in the presentation tonight about the different tiers of support and recognizing, you know, that students haven't typically had a great experience by the time they end up at Tate, and so they really do a great job of wrapping their arms around the students and having high expectations as we go along. I mean, we see great completion rates here at Tate as well, and I guess I should probably be quiet so I don't steal all their
I wasn't going to brag.
Slides 2, 3, 4. But I feel like they do deserve to be bragged on because I think it's kind of like an unsung hero in the district in some senses with Tate. You know, that we probably don't talk about some of the successes enough, but I know our team has talked frequently about what are the things that we found that work at Tate and how do we try to move those to some of our other schools and build some of those systems in the same way on some of our comprehensive campuses. So with that, Ann, we'll let you take her away.
Great. All right, well, thank you for that great introduction. And again, Christina Brown, my assistant principal, and she'll just jump in whenever possible or whenever I forget to say something. But I did first want to say to the board members, thank you for your service. I appreciate that. And we don't always get our student rep at the meetings because they rely on transportation. And I teach at the university on Tuesday nights and things, so we don't always get them there, but we're trying to find somebody who might have their own transportation. And Evan does, but he'll be graduating soon. So.
Not every time.
He is good, yeah.
So anyway, thanks for that, and also for the ESC and directors here. We feel really supported here at Tate, and we do appreciate. Usually when I call and ask for something, I get it, so I try not to do that, but I do appreciate your support very much. So, okay, so Molly came by and visited at Tate, and I loved it. We went on a tour, and I brought her in and out of classrooms, and she said, gosh, I think you should really, I'd love to get the rest of the board here to see what's going on. And so that's why we're here tonight, just to share some of the interventions that we're doing. We do a lot, but I'm going to really just hone in on the actual interventions. So if you have other questions or I skipped over things, just let me know. But I thought it was most pertinent to what interventions my teachers are doing that leads to student success. So again, just the broad description, the essential components of MTSS, which is a multiple tiered support for students. And learn about the resources here at Tate High School that really become the change agent for a lot of our students, and learn the variations and adaptations to the concepts in our systems that apply to Tate that are so effective in supporting our students. So we do start with these guiding beliefs of by John Hattie, the Golden Rules for Educators. Our teachers solely believe, it's really this last line, that the teacher's role is to diagnose, intervene, and assist their impact on students. So we try a ton of stuff and we're like, okay, that didn't work, let's try this. But we just don't sit back and blame the kid. Well, they're never here. They're always tardy, or their behavior gets in the way. If a kid is, we kind of believe if it's predictable, it's preventable. If I have a student that is never here on Mondays and Fridays, what am I going to do Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to make sure they're getting what they need? And so we really do get to know the students, and we evaluate our effectiveness on their success. So it is an individualized approach. And when we have like 220 kids registered, so it's getting to the point where, yeah, it's tougher, but we can still do that, help kids on an individual basis. So these are just kind of our guiding mind frames. And I would say 100% of our teachers really believe this. So again, I mentioned John Hattie, and the research on teachers' collective efficacy is consistent that with the effect size of 1.34, effective teacher teams have the power to really accelerate student learning. And when I say team, I think you're going to see a theme here tonight. We have a lot of reciprocal accountability. So when we initiate something, whether it's helping in our 4 legs of attendance, behavior, academics, or mental health, we follow up and we really see and we evaluate. And we come back and we're like, that's not working. So we do a lot to support students, but again, it's on this collective efficacy for our team. So we do have a lot of systems in place, our framework, which is, in all students, gen ed, special ed, it's every ed. So we're supporting everyone. And we combine academics and behavior supports through PBIS and the response to intervention. So evaluating if our intervention's helping. So we have school-wide systems that I'm going to share with you, and then how we individualize. So we are merging the data and our practices and our systems to be effective. So this is a common graphic you'll see for PBIS. We have our systems, we keep our data, and then we evaluate our practice at all times. So we developed this matrix that you have in front of you because we found out that we are supporting kids in so many different ways. We talk about which leg. Like we obviously, kids come here because they're behind academically, but why are they behind academically? Is it because of mental health issues, behavioral issues, attendance issues? So as we started to help kids, we would get here, and I might have a teacher that came to me one time and said, man, this kid with a behavior problem, I really think they just need to go off-site because this is probably the worst behaved kid I've ever seen. They don't have any school skills. And I said, wait a minute. And they said, not only that, they're behind academically, and they're never here, and things like that. And I said, stop. Okay, which leg do we want to support? What's your priority right now? And they said, okay, let's start with behavior. And I said, we cannot go to tier 3 until we know that tier 1 is, this is where 100% of our kids get the interventions in tier 1 first. And then, once everybody is with fidelity, getting all the things that we say they're going to get here on tier 1, then if they can continue to have behavior issues, we go to tier 2, and we start doing these individualized plans and getting feedback. And then if they're not working, we go back. Interventions, you can't just do them and say, oh, then that didn't work. It takes 8 to 12 weeks of retrying interventions, and we do them like every 2 weeks. We might have a student that we work with and we say, hey, you're having a lot of issues in this class, your name came up at our meeting, and what's going on? And they might share with us something going on. Oh, I'm off my meds. And we're like, well, that's your choice, but we still need to be able to show up and behave and not be disruptive and be on time. And we involve them and we talk to them and show them. Then we have a 2-week plan, and then we come back. We're like, you have improved so much on your being on time. Congratulations, you're still being a little disruptive. How can we help you? We write the plan. We do this for 8 weeks. We continue to do it, but we're monitoring and we're involving them and we're complimenting them on the improvements we're seeing. And they begin to trust us, and they're like, hey, you guys really care. Like, you're sitting here watching us and things like that. So that's what I talk about in tier 1, 2, and 3 in each individualized leg. We may say students, we get a lot of students with mental health issues, anxiety, depression, gender identity issues. They don't feel like they fit in the other high schools. So we're supporting them in a lot of different ways with these legs. And I should back up so we do identify as the warriors, and that's because our students said, they feel like warriors in their own way, just battling their own unique battles just to get to school. So it's really cool. We have orientation and we explain what a warrior is, and a warrior shows caring for others, takes ownership to their own behavior, and shows respect and responsibility, and we acknowledge those all the time. And that's just, we're a strong PBIS school, and I know you've had a presentation on PBIS, so I won't get into that. But I will say that when we first started to do PBIS, my teachers were like, you expect me to hand out tickets to high school students? And I'm like, yep, yes I do. And they're like, well, shouldn't they already be doing this? Like, this is ridiculous. And I said, well, you know, who doesn't like to be acknowledged for doing something right? And that's how we look at it. We're just acknowledging them, like, hey, and we give specific information, we give specific feedback, like, you're so caring to your peer, thank you for doing that. We just give them a ticket and we move on. And other kids are like, oh, okay, it's clear, I know what they want. I did this myself, and we keep acknowledging them. And so they do really like that. So that's a little bit of the PBIS. There's a lot more to PBIS than just tickets, but it's just our teachers, it's a reminder to them that I constantly have to acknowledge and recognize that they're trying and they're doing some great things. So then, obviously, tiers 2 and tier 3 is where we really get in and we're responding to our interventions and finding that out. So MTSS is this really preventative-based concept where we try to eliminate barriers to the students, like what are your issues, what are we doing? We identify the support they need, and then we implement it, and then we determine if it's been effective. If it's not, we change it. And so we don't want new problems to arise. We're trying to reduce a lot of the existing challenges, and if we need to, we'll reduce the intensity and complexity of what's needed. And this is like universal is everyone, all expectations, and then at tier 2 we kind of target some students, and then definitely some intensive work for our tier 3 students. And most of our students would be considered tier 3 because 100% of our students have failed at the other high schools and they come here academically behind. But we really just start with these supports and they really respond, and then eventually we don't have everyone at tier 3 here. So it's just a handful of kids as well. So some of the specific structures, this is where I'm talking about the reciprocal accountability. All teachers are on this. So for our academic support, what we do is we have an advisory, like other high schools. So once a week, they'll go to their homeroom, they get all the announcements. But this is also a time where our advisors can meet with the students and say, hey, how are things going? Print out your grades, how are you doing? Is there any way I can support you with this? We do our SEL lessons, we do some community building, and if they say, I don't know why I have an F in this class, we say, well, can I help you talk to that teacher, or whatever. So that's advisory, and they just check on their grades and let them know. They also, we have this thing called our intervention, academic intervention is called Warrior Work Time, and we remind them that they'll be going Tuesday through Friday, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But then our teachers, we have an SST meeting for all of our staff on Mondays. We just bring up students that were concerned in any one of those legs, attendance, behavior, academics, or mental health. And then we get everybody's perspective. Are you seeing this? Are you not? Some of my teachers are going, I don't know what you're doing in their class. They have an A in your class and they're failing mine. And they might just say, you know what, they're always here in the morning and they tend to walk out in the afternoons, or they don't have that endurance to stay for the day. It could be that they cannot be with this student. So we're really trying to look at a lot of different factors that why are students not succeeding in one class and maybe another. And credit to our teachers to do this SST meeting. And we don't just talk about anybody, they have to be a pattern of issues, and then we bring them up and talk about them. But I think one of the key things that we do is the next day, we have this thing called mini SST, and that's all the non-teaching staff. We follow up from this meeting. We're like, okay, what did we hear in that meeting? Whose parents, let's call the students in, and that's when we say on Tuesday mornings, they get called in, they're like, I must have got mentioned at the SST meeting on Monday. Because we're like, hey, we want to talk to you, what's going on? We're like, you're missing class, we've heard this. You're having conflicts, whatever, and we talk to them, and we focus on that with the students, and then we follow through. We make phone calls home. We pull students in, like I said, and make plans. We might or just pull them in and tell them positive things. So that's where we take a lot of load off the teachers, and we are helping them with trying to identify the issues. And then lastly, we have an academic support team, and this team is specifically only focused on the academics, because too many times you can say, well, they're never here, or I've called home, or they're having mental health issues, and you go down the slippery slope of saying all the things that's going on with the kid, but you really don't get traction on their academics. So Autumn, who's back there, every Monday, so every Friday I ask my teachers, please fill out the F list. It's just on a Google form. And I need to know who's failing your class, and then we have a drop-down menu as to maybe why and a place for comments. And so every week, my teachers print off their F list. And I'm never like, why is that kid failing? What are you doing? It's not like that at all. It's like, because I can't be in your room all the time, we're like, okay, this student is failing, and they might say, don't worry about it. They missed a test. I'll catch them up next week in Warrior Work Time. Or they might say, you know, I'm really concerned. This kid misses one day, and it's like he misses 3. They process so slow. Really put them on a watch list for a new intervention. So the teachers, without even having to be in the meeting, we get feedback from them. And then our first tier 1 intervention then would be during lunch. Our kids get a whole hour for lunch. It's called Warrior Work Time, but our teachers only get a half hour. And half of the teachers are back here in this academic wing in their room, and anybody with a D or an F has to go down and work with that teacher one-on-one to get caught up, raise their D or an F to a C. If they have all A's, B's, and C's, they get a whole hour for lunch, which they enjoy. But if they have a D or an F, we're hunting them down, and they're here because they leave after school, and there's no time for intervention. So we do it during the lunch hour. That is huge, because the expectation is you have to have A's, B's, and C's. But many kids just love coming in and getting that one-to-one attention, or it's small group. It's probably like 5 or 6 kids. If I had more than that, I'd be in talking to the teacher going, why do I have 12 kids failing your class right now? What's going on? And that would be a different conversation. So the academic team, every Monday we print off the F list. We assign kids to the intervention. And then we also, every 3 weeks, we change the intervention. If I had a teacher say, don't worry about it, Warrior Work Time is going to be great. After 3 weeks, I'm like, Warrior Work Time has not been great. So do I need to automate? A lot of times just pull a student out. You've heard of success centers, those are helpful. We don't have that, but we do have, we'll pull out a kid and get them out of the class, maybe they're doing well, and say, hey, we need to get this science project done, or we need to get this done, let's do it right now. And they really enjoy getting that support and helping them out. They first have to go to Warrior Work Time and do it on their own time, but if it's a problem. The other thing that was really great about Warrior Work Time and printing off your Fs every week, we can't wait until midterm to determine who's failing, because now I've lost 6 weeks of intervention. I need grades updated, and we need to know immediately. And a lot of kids might even say, God, I just didn't do that one assignment. We're like, yep, and go do it right now. And so that's kind of our academic support structure. And I wanted to just share, actually I got this today, stole this from I was just at a math in-service today, and I said, can I steal that slide? Because I just feel like, again, our teachers are looking at, it's not an achievement gap for a lot of our students, it's an opportunity gap. And like our kids, many of them, you know, we're over-identified in minorities, ELL, special ed, low socioeconomic. It's our students, I think, they have other family situations or other factors that might contribute to them always struggling and having those barriers in front of them. So we're like, we're going to remove these barriers. It's not an achievement gap. We know you can do it. We're going to hold you up to some really high expectations, and we're going to support you in this way. And they see that, and they respond. So I do like that it's called an opportunity gap. Here are the same structures. Again, our teachers are very much involved in the behavior support. We are PBIS, meaning 100% of our teachers are out there reinforcing those core values, acknowledging them when they're doing well, constantly praising the students, it's hard. You have to dig deep. You know, every day is a new day. And it's like somebody might have left yesterday just calling me every name in the book, and the next morning I'm like, good morning, how are you today? And they're like, hey, how are you? You know, but that's what we do. And then we hold them up to their, the core values of every student is going to be respectful and responsible. And if they're not, we have our, this is old language, Student Advisory Center, but they call them SPACE now. I don't know what SPACE stands for, but a Student Advisory Center where it's either positive or negative, a student needs to go down there. But if a teacher sends them down here, if a student acts out more than 3 times, we say, I need you to go down to the Student Advisory Center. And then someone down there is like, what's going on? Why did you take some ownership? Why did you get sent down here? And then they have to say, well, I was being disruptive, or they've asked me several times to not do this. And then we call the teacher. When they're ready, they cannot leave that room until the teacher comes down and says, hey, you know, I asked you 3 times, and I really need to get this worksheet done so we can move on, and this is what I need you to do before you leave. And they repair that relationship. And we also do it if there's a conflict. We stay in there until we have some conflict resolutions done. So the Student Advisory Center is a really important part of our day, just holding kids up to high expectations. And then if they're constantly in the SAC for behavior, then this is when we come up with those behavior plans. We have a lot of documentation, and we share it with the students. And so we conference. So again, our teachers work, they understand these systems. There's not a teacher, I'll come down a lot and say, no, they probably should have been sent out to the SAC. If I have a teacher that brings up a student in the SST meeting that says, you know what, that kid is constantly disrupting in lunch, I need to talk about him. We're like, Bunny, he wasn't sent down to the SAC. And they're like, you're right, that's on me. I gotta hold them up to high expectations. I can't just let this happen every day in my class and then expect somebody else to handle it. It's on them first to follow our expectations and be really consistent. So this is how this reciprocal accountability helps. So like our general meetings, we just have a lot of meetings every day, and in SST, they'll hand in, who are you concerned about, what are they doing, what's going on, and then we make these plans, and then we follow up on mini SST, and when we make a behavior plan, and like calling home, setting up parent meetings, and sharing the plans with the teachers, we give it back to the teachers, and we said, okay, here's the plan, but now in 2 weeks, you give us feedback, and if you don't give us feedback, we're gonna assume everything's okay. And then in Warrior Work Time, the academic team is going to support those with Fs. We run around and getting those kids with Ds and Fs and making sure they're in your room, but you need to make sure to tell us they're failing or where they're having problems. So we constantly have this reciprocal accountability, and we have a lot of data. If they're sent out to the SAC, that's our data. If they're Ds and Fs and documentations and things. So it's a lot of interacting. Autumn, am I missing anything huge?
No.
Okay. And then, so I just wanted to show that our staff, just as our new thinking is that really effective collaboration is the outcome. We make a lot of difference when we put it on us to follow our systems, but also to collaborate and talk to us. And we have our measuring our systemic and our vital signs. If a kid is constantly out in the SAC or constantly out in the hall, then that's a problem. It's indicating like what's going on. If this kid is constantly out in the hall, then someone's not holding them up to expectations or something like that. So we're constantly reading our vital signs. And so our outcomes have been good, helpful. So specifically though, these are kind of the interventions that we do at every level. I wanted to share these, and I know I'm going to probably end there, but with our academics, I told you about our Warrior Work Time. That's during lunch. If you have a D or an F, you're down there working with your teachers. We have what's called BLAST. That's our lunchtime academic support time. And some students just can't handle going from room to room at lunch, so we just autumn pull them in and work with them until they're caught up. And then we even have work days. We'll have kids that, well, we went to Chicago for a week. And so when they come back, we're like, okay, we're gonna anticipate this problem. Let's just put you in Autumn's office today. We're gonna get you caught up on your work. We're not gonna be like, where the heck were you? Can't believe this. Well, that's not gonna get anybody anywhere. We're like, okay, so you were gone for a week. Let's pull you in. We talk to the teachers, what is vital that they must do now to get them caught up, and we just do it. It's annoying, but we do it, you know? So those are work days. I think when I showed, Molly got to see this in action, our blended learning, amazing. Our math teacher in this room, she records her 7 to 8 minute lecture every day. And so first the kids walk in, the tables are all here, and they do a problem of the day, and they reinforce, you know, hi. But then they get their headphones on, and they do the math lesson for the day. And she can tell through this app called Edpuzzle, she'll put in some assessments, and she can tell on her dashboard how well they're doing. And then when they're done with the lesson, they get their printouts, you can see them over there, in their packet, and they do their work. And then she walks around and helps them individually. What is so successful about this taping your lecture is that the students who miss 2 or 3 days and then come back, they are getting the same instruction as everybody else. They're not running around the room going, oh yeah, you were gone the other day, what did you miss? Okay, she has them right down there, you watch this lesson, and here you go. The second thing about taping it, if she's standing up with the board, and I don't know math, but x-axis and y-axis and all this, and asking kids to raise their hand, no one's gonna do it. No one volunteers in front of the whole class. Or if they did, another kid's gonna go, that was stupid, why did you say that? That's or don't ask a question, and then all of a sudden it's a behavior management nightmare. So, she records her lessons, she can do it, she said, so many kids have, instead of asking questions, they'll rewind that practice problem. And go, how did she do that again? And she'll see that they're rewinding, and then once they're done with listening to her lecture, and then she's there to support them and help them. Some kids come in and they can work ahead, and they're like, I'm ahead. And other kids are like, I'm behind, but I know exactly what I need to do. And they can do it at home if they want to. So that's blended learning. Tara next door, Miss Herod for social studies, she also does blended learning at times, and she will, she's really good with the vocabulary. She will Google read and write. She might just copy and paste the textbook reading, and then in parentheses for our ELL students, or special ed students, she might say, and this word means this as they're reading, and Google Read Write will read it for them. And then also, but she has in there, remember, or this is related to what we talked about yesterday. So she puts in a lot of supports, individualized for students who are listening to her lectures. And then also a lot of kids, she can put in extensions for the kids who, and they have no idea they're doing extensions because, yeah, they're all listening to their own little individualized lesson. And so that's been really helpful for blended learning. We do have co-teaching in math and science for students with our ELLs and special ed students. We're always checking with students on their grades and monitoring that F-list weekly. We do have a project-based learning class where we are supporting kids that will get multiple credits for one class. They're doing projects, they're combining cross-curricular, like social studies and English, or maybe a math and an English credit. And we have an excellent teacher. I don't know if I ever lost her, but she's doing great. And so on PBL, we also have a lot of options, independent studies where students can take home extra curriculum and work on their own time to complete an independent study. We do have hybrid. A lot of kids who have to work in the afternoon, they might just come in for the morning and then they work in the afternoon, and they could do some Edgenuity classes at night. So hybrid schedules. Or we do have students that are older than 18, they're like 19, 20 who work and they're finishing up online. But we have teachers here until 6 o'clock. Autumn is here till 6 o'clock at night and Jen to support them if they need it. And but every trimester as part of PBIS, we have a huge awards assembly, and that's helpful. Okay, attendance. You'll see on the bulletin board as you come in, there's positive acknowledgments. Every time we're sitting in a meeting, I ask my teachers, you gotta listen to me for the next hour, so please write 3 postcards home. Please write a shout out, and you'll see them on the board, and kids run up there every day and read shout outs. They're like, you sent a postcard home, my mom put it on the refrigerator, but they love it. And, because they don't usually get a lot of positive. So we, Autumn text messages and calls kids in the mornings to make sure they're here. We check in with students. We do offer rides to and from school for about 8 kids a day. It gets them here. We have bus passes. And we also do the positive emails home and things. Autumn has 2 therapy dogs here. They're amazing. That gets kids here. And then for behavior, it's all about relationships and our conflict resolution in space and real transparency and just coming up with grades. If you can't act this way, like this is not going to be successful. The name of the game now is 305 credits, and this is how many credits you have, and this is what it's going to take to get there. So we're really transparent and have those honest conversations with them, but we're also way ahead of them. We're on top of them as well. Behavior plans, and then for mental health, we do have a lot of supportive counseling groups, our NEST supports that you support throughout the district, positive recognition, lots of groups, alternative places to work, and just what's going on, help us out. And again, I just threw in this high reliability thing because this is all about PBIS, that safe and supportive collaborative culture that we have. Students know we care about them and we're not going to give up on them. And now we're moving into this effective teaching in every classroom. We've had it, but now this is just a framework for everything. We've done AVID, we've done with the Wicker strategies, and this is just reinforcing all these strategies, the PSYOP strategies, everything that we know, and we're just implementing. So I'm really glad to see that this framework is happening. And then this is my last page. So it's just our mission and our vision here at Tate and what we believe in. But you know, it starts, we have student first. How can we, a student first mentality, we help them academically. We have a lot of great professional development. Brentwood AA did all our professional development on Thursdays on the NASOP this year, and we're going to continue our collaboration with them. We have PBIS and just constant improvement. There's no judgment. When teachers write, like, I'm really having an issue with this kid, there's no judgment. We're like, okay, let's just put our minds together and let's just try and problem solve what we can do. So I know I'm supposed to keep it to like 20 minutes.
There we go.
Okay. Autumn, did I leave anything out?
No? Yeah.
She's my PBIS guru. She makes sure everything happens.
I just have to say, Tate, and I've said it to you before, it's best kept secret in the district. I mean, when I came out here and saw the teaching, I mean, I knew that, but yeah, just, yeah, you really do a lot of great things and such an impressive use of data too.
Yes.
And I think Autumn has a piece of that.
Yes.
Yes.
Huge.
Yes.
She keeps our F list. Yeah, I think a lot of people are like, they walk in here and their first comment is like, oh, this is like a school. I'm like,
There's
just like rolling around, like swinging chains or hanging from the rafters and stuff. So
It's really impressive the safety net that you've constructed here for your students. Can you remind us of what the demographics are at the school?
yes, I don't have like the specifics, but every year it's funny. It rarely changes. So we're about 73% free and reduced, but we have about, it's always around 44% white. Let's see, am I adding? 42% black. And then our highest population growth is in the Hispanics, so about 8 to 10%. So what am I at?
What's your ELL percentage?
ELL,
And special ed?
special ed is at like 25 to 28%. We are over-identified there in special ed. ELL is over-identified, but I feel like because we only have, we're about 8% is Hispanic. And most of them have been identified as needing ELL services. And many of those ELL services are also dual qualified for IEPs and ELL supports.
And then, you mentioned that not everyone is tier 3. Do you have a ballpark for how many are in tier 2 and
Yeah.
tier 3, and how that compares to the other high schools?
Yes, so when you look at the MTSS triangle and it's tier 1 is 80% and tier 2 is 20% and the 5%, ours, we would have said before almost inverted, but I wouldn't say that now because our systems are strong, but I would say on tier 1, it's probably 40% and tier 2 is more 50%. And then tier 3 is like a 10%. So it's higher than the other schools, but we're managing that. Tier 2 is our biggest support.
Charlie?
So, and it's really impressive program here, and I agree with Molly. And I say this to Matt all the time, we should, our publicity should increase for what we're doing at Tate. I have a couple of things I wanted to ask about. One, the overall engagement with students that I think you're describing here seems to me to be comparable to what was written about in the book we were given by a community member called Lost at School, which I think is The Green, is that?
Ross Green.
Ross Green, okay, right. So to me, it sounds like what's happened here is similar to what that author proposes for teacher-student relationships, especially in collaborative problem solving. Is that the CBS thing? Okay. So I don't see why we can't say that too, that we're incorporating other things. We're incorporating the PBIS model, which I again hear scorned a lot in the community, in a way that makes a lot of sense with other approaches to education.
Yeah. So it's all about relationships first and not being, so if I have a student, really swearing and going off, we're looking behind the behavior. We're like, what is causing that behavior? We can't take it personal. I can't say you're suspended, you're out of here. And so unfortunately, I do think a lot of if a person were to come in and say, my God, the kid's just swearing and going off, what are they doing about that? Like, they want to say punishment or discipline, but we have to just be like, hey, come down here, let's calm down. There's something going on, what is it? And we have to give them time to do that, and we have to develop those trusting relationships. So it takes a lot, and I always am fearful, really, of publicizing anything we do. I feel like some people could be judgmental because they don't understand what's going on. But
Well, there are a lot of judgmental people that communicate with us.
so it's
all the
really
time.
being trauma informed. Like, wow, this kid's like going off right now. We had a student like that, just, I hate you, to a teacher like, I hate you and I hate this effing class, and slammed the door and walked out. So we let him go down to the SAC, and then a little later we're like, hey, like, what's going on? This is not like you, this is not typical. And then your business, and then finally they just said, all right, I just found out my mom spent my paycheck. I've been working really hard, I just got $500, this is the second time she's done that. Oh, okay. Boy, that would be really upsetting, wouldn't it? And yeah, what can we do? How can we problem solve? Has this happened before? And the kid totally calms down. Then we're like, hey, so back with your teachers, they really deserve to be sworn at. And they're like, no. So that's when we call the teacher down, they're ready to apologize and say, hey, I wasn't mad at you, I was mad at my mom, and I didn't handle that well, and I apologize. And our teachers are really good about accepting those apologies, but there was a consequence, like now you have to be in here the rest of the day, but we're gonna bring you your work. But we understand why you're upset. And then they come back and like I said, everybody's a new day, hey, how you doing? Are you feeling any better? Keep checking in with them. And so, yeah, those relationships, they're vital for that trust, and we do have to be like, geez, I'm even afraid to say hi to some kids. I'm like, I'm gonna do it, but
You switch off and on. We switch off and on.
Those are just like our 10% that are really tough and have those childhood adverse experiences. They come in with chips on their shoulder. I don't even want to be here. I can't believe I have to come to this school. I am trying to change the verbiage of you have to go to Tate because of this. It should be like you get to go to Tate, or, you know, Tate can be really supportive of you. Yeah, there's, I think some vocabulary
Right,
change
right,
at the other high
right,
schools.
right. And so the other thing I wanted to ask for your comments on, to me, I know, you really don't know very much about teacher preparation coming out of UNI and the university too, especially their education program. So do students come out of those programs looking for a teaching job and know very much about how this teaching scheme works?
Yeah.
And are they willing to say, oh great, I want to try this? And they learn very much about this in
Yeah.
their at the College of Education.
I would say, coming out of these teacher prep programs, they're not quite ready for this level, only because so much with experience. They have the tools they need, and they just need to get into a classroom and experiment. Like so many times, like, yeah, shouldn't have said that. Like, you know, you just learn on the job of what to do and what not to do. But I think the teacher education programs are changing, and we're talking about being trauma informed. We're talking about behavior management as, I actually happen to teach one behavior management class, and there's just one acronym we really stress, and that's RPM, and it's all about your relationships. So we are teaching them, your relationships are so important, and then the P is setting those parameters and then enforcing them. Because anybody can slap up the rules on your expectations on the wall and say, these are my rules, but if they are not setting those parameters, continually teaching those expectations, then that's just a poster on your wall and you're gonna have issues. And the last one is meaningful and motivating curriculum, related to the kids. Like, why should I be in this class right now? So really, behavior management is a 3-tiered approach in a classroom. If I might have great relationships, but I might be a boring teacher. Or I might have great curriculum, great relationships, but if I'm not surrounding parameters, they're gonna step all over me. With that being said, I remember I hired a teacher, it was July, and I needed a math teacher. And in walks this perky little girl, she was so cute, from Naperville, Illinois. I'm like, oh no, and they're gonna eat her alive. Remember Disha? She was amazing. She was amazing. And she came in and I'm like, oh my God. And I was thinking to myself, you're gonna be awesome. They're gonna eat you alive. I will make sure I'm in her room. She was amazing. Like, the kids would be like, this is boring. Why are we doing this? She goes, really? It's important you show your work, and because I need you to do that. She'd walk over and help someone else. And how are you? And they're like, she just didn't respond to my insult. Like, what's going on? She just let everything roll off her, and she ended up to be great, but she moved back down. But so there are a few people who could really do well, but I would recommend, I try not to even get student teachers here. I love practicum students. Get practicum students in here. But the student teachers, there's no comparison to teaching at West High and having 150 kids a day and learning how to grade and learning how to manage all of that. So when they say, we really want a student teacher here, I'm like, oh, okay, but do they know they're not going to get the same experience?
So who's asking to have student teachers?
Sometimes the university will. We love to get the practicum students, but sometimes the university, the student teaching, this isn't the best place. They learn a lot, but they don't learn how to grade 150 grade,
You don't learn the other stuff.
Yeah.
You learn West.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ann.
Okay, it's a dangerous question, but can you tell me what's the referral process look like now? How do kids get to take? I mean, because it's out there like, oh, if you're bad, you get sent to take.
Yeah,
And I know that's not true.
that's true. It is true. No, how they get to take. So we ask, we really rely on the other high schools. They decide who's behind, who might not graduate on time, and they send us our referrals. And we do have so many that we do have to kind of go through them and say, well, we can support this student right now, but maybe we can't take them as a freshman because we need to get these juniors and seniors in here. But we love having 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, so we have the trappings of a traditional high school. and things, and there are a lot of, if I know a freshman's not gonna make it, why make them fail a whole year? So we do try and balance a lot of their needs. I will tell you that our behavior leg fills up way too quickly, and I've asked, I said, you guys, I cannot take one more major behavior problem right now, added on top of the ones that we're having. But please, send me maybe the quiet, depressed kid. I can get a few more in class that way and still be able to feel like I could support them. There was a time at the beginning of the year I said, I cannot take one more mental health issue right now. I have too many kids crying. I can't possibly go to class right now. And I'm like, why? You know, and it's just like, because this is happening in my life. I'm like, okay, can we put that on hold for a little bit? Like, they're just so, I can't, so I guess with the referral process, it's just really hard. I understand we're trying to get everybody in here, but sometimes the makeup, I've had to plead with the other schools, please send me somebody, have somebody else you can get me. So I feel like it's a real draft at times, just choosing and picking and trying to get people over here, so.
And I haven't been through the whole lot of the referral process meeting, I mean, we've been through it the last couple of years, but one of the things we've really tried to have buildings do is within the referral form is to ensure that they've documented what they've tried before. And every building's a little bit different as far as the extent of it and the complexity of which they go through with details, but some of them not so much. So, but in those cases, it may be, well, you forgot to put this down, or maybe there's nothing tried before. So, and this isn't the appropriate next step for the student, there's other things that can be tried within your building. And it's also, the part of that referral process is also that Ann and Christina are the first contacts that they hear about going to Tate. That never lands well with parents typically. And that the first communication about Tate should be from a Tate staff member. Like, this should be something that has been discussed with the family, with the student, so it's not viewed as we're just throwing you away to the wolves, go to Tate. Good luck.
Yeah.
So this is from my own ignorance that pops off kind of on the referral process. Do we open enroll students into Tate?
No.
No, okay.
We are the regional high school.
That's what it's saying.
Well, yeah, that's different. They can't just open, enroll, and come, but we are the regional high school for Clear Creek, Solon, West Branch, and Tipton.
Tipton.
This may be more of a question for the superintendent or one of the assistant. How do you determine the ratio of Iowa City Community School students here to Clear Creek or the other ones?
Yeah, I don't think we have a great answer or process to that, Mitch. That agreement was kind of started at the Advent Regional Center, and so I think that brought together some conversations where the district then entered into this partnership with the other local school districts about how to serve students, you know, in a more efficient way, potentially on a regional basis. And so I do remember some conversations I had with Ann in my last role that we would just tell the school district, we don't have space at this time, we can't serve your student. But if we have space, and like she was talking about, if one of her tiers or one of her legs is not kind of full of that level of need right now, we're more likely to take the student at that point. They stay a student of their district,
Yes.
right? Because they graduate like a Clear Creek Amanda diploma. We just try to help them get across the stage of graduation.
So if they graduate, when I'm thinking of the state rating systems, if a student from Clear Creek graduates from Tate High School, Clear Creek High School gets credited for that graduation?
Right, and still they graduate, because it's still
No.
technically their student. They're just
Yeah.
receiving the programming here.
Do they receive instruction or classes here? Do they take regular
Yeah, they're
curriculum here?
getting classes here, but that's all covered in the agreement. Now, I see Christina was kind of shaking her head no about whose graduation rate it would count for. I know it's still got to impact the home districts because it's still a graduate for them, because it's still their student, they're still awarding to graduation. I don't know how those students affect Tate's specific look, like when they pull DE data to say like, what's the graduation rate for Tate? Now, I don't know if they're like dual counted, and they count for like the successful graduate here at Tate and then a successful graduate back in Clear Creek. That would be a question we probably want to parse out, unless you know more specifically.
I think in our contract that we had, and we have a meeting set up, I think, to discuss it more too, but like it was, we request their records if they actually graduate. and they graduate from Tate and get a diploma from Tate High School, they become Iowa City School District student.
If
Is
they
how-
want that.
If they want that. So when it first started, I was a school counselor here, and we would try to have them get, like, if Clear Creek and Manna had different requirements for graduation, like personal finance at the time, Clear Creek had that, we did not. Then, you know, if they wanted to still try to graduate from their home high school, the requirements were quite different, and with semesters, you know, at the schools. So I'd say we don't have a lot of students that actually graduate at their home high school. They are a student here, they're served here, but we only request their records if they graduate. So they don't become our dropouts, they only become our graduates if they actually graduate,
Oh, I
is
think
how
we were just talking about
it was
that.
set up with the contract, I believe.
So if they complete, then we'll count them as our graduate.
Yeah.
But if they're not successful, then we never request the records, they really never transfer onto our rolls, and they don't count as a dropout for Iowa City Schools.
Correct.
And right now, we only have about, what, 4 or 5?
Yeah, we don't have a lot, you know, that come.
And 2 from
They don't-
Solon
yeah.
and 2 from.
We monitor that pretty closely, because
Yeah.
we've talked about if it would compromise our
Yeah.
ability to serve students here in the district, that's probably not something we can continue.
What is your capacity here?
Don't ask.
200, but we're at 222. 243 is in our system because we have students in the T3 program after school.
And one thing I could say, like, with the referral process, like, we always have pre-meetings beforehand to review the forms, and Ann and Christine done, all right, here's our number, here's what we're going into thinking that we can take for this trimester. And then at the end of the meeting, like, well, what about,
Yes.
fine, we can't turn this, so they
Yes.
always are one of the kids, a couple more and a couple more, so.
It doesn't, I can't play poker.
So what would we have to do to increase the capacity?
Build.
More
Add more
Yeah, that's
students.
my question's not, one, what's your sweet spot? And like, let's just say you had a magic wand, right? Could it work with 400 kids, even if you have the space and the staff? Or is there something about the dynamic? Also, maybe with that, do you see room for any other, like, could some kids be better served in a totally different type of environment? You see what I'm getting at? This is all over the place, and obviously, folks in the classroom know, and like we're doing with the RAM model, it's not all about numbers. It's also about the dynamics and how the kids fit together. And obviously that's going to change all the time, but you know, for the board's purposes, like say we wanted to expand, one, is that even a good idea? Or are there other models that can work in different configurations that might serve kids better? Because that's I'm, like I said, we should advertise it. And I'm like, no, we don't need to advertise it because the demand is too high right now.
Yeah.
I would say we cannot serve all of the kids who need what we've got. So then the question is, how could we serve all those kids? Because if you, sure, we could say, well, build and have more staff, but maybe that's not. So I just wonder what your
Yeah.
perspective
Two points that stuck out. There is a sweet spot because our teachers do put in so much effort into developing those relationships and dealing with the constant, retraining on that's disrespectful and you need this and that. So prior to the build on, we could, the max was 150 and we were saying like 130 was our sweet spot. Like, I can't deal with any more of these kids. So now with the build on and adding a little more staff, I'm thinking 200 is our sweet spot. Because, not everybody does show up every single day, but our teachers, you gotta realize every trimester, we're getting new students in that we're like, here we go again, okay. We can't do that, that's disrespectful, here's our orientation, this is how you act. It's just Groundhog's Day every trimester, just trying to get kids, and it's awesome because we even have students who have been here a while, like, you better just hand over your phone because they don't allow phones here, or you should just go down to Warrior Work Time because she's not gonna leave your side until you go down to Warrior Work Time. So it's that consistency and that constant belief in the kids, and so there is a sweet spot. Like Warrior Work Time wouldn't work, our individual plans wouldn't work when you get too many. Though, could we do it on a bigger scale? I imagine we would just need a bigger place, but it would take a lot of good training and consistency. And the other thing is, it scares me when I hear maybe we could serve some kids somewhere else. I really hate to pull out a lot of those kids that just need that smaller environment, those awesome students who come every day, involved, and just love school now, and then to just be and say this is just the place for only kids with behavior issues. Because maybe the kids with mental health issues could be served somewhere else. I would hate that because we'd lose kind of like that modeling, and teachers would, just that, I'm trying to say, just that whole population.
I'd say too, when we were actually at Hoover for the construction, our system started to break down because it was too big. It was too big of hallways and stairs and outside on the playground, and all that to try to get our work time and some of our interventions in place. Here, it's 1.5 hallways, and you can't go missing and you can't hide. So that's where some of our, systems work for us.
The challenge for us, I think, is constantly to make sure that Ann's getting the level of staffing she needs to be able to implement these things with fidelity, right? I mean, because there's kids with significant amount of barriers, right, that come into learning, and then there's significant just people power it takes to implement the level of intervention she's talking about here. And so if that ratio gets too far out of balance, then it gets really difficult to have success. And that's, a conversation we have frequently is, yeah, we might be able to fit more people in the building, but, can we couple that with the staffing to still ensure effectiveness? If we can't do that, then we start to have diminishing returns across the board for everybody we're trying to serve. So I think that's to Ann's sweet spot comment. It's hard to predict that. And then like Christina said, you get into a bigger facility, if you don't have the additional staff members also to supervise something like that, right, then it creates some other challenges too, where you're not able to wrap around as tight. So, but it is something we talk about, right, especially in the years we were growing as a district, right? I mean, if we're growing across the district, right, we're probably growing in the amount of students that also present with multiple barriers and multiple levels of need, and that was a constant conversation for us. So.
Our secondary team, like with Lucas on board now as our director, and we have discussions, we've talked a lot, how can we use these systems at the bigger high schools? I taught at West High for 6 years. I was the assistant principal at City High for 3 years, and I know a lot of these systems can work. We just have to adapt them to that bigger. So instead of running off the DNF list for 1,500 students, let's take your top 200 kids. Who are you most worried about? That's the size we have here. Print off those DNF lists just for your top 200. And I know that Michelle Bacon wouldn't mind if I use this example because Bobby Bacon in the middle of the trimester had an F in Spanish. She's like, Bobby Bacon, why do you have an F in Spanish right now? And he had 2 caring parents who took care of that F eventually, and got those assignments in. But yet, those 200 that need to be at risk, and I need to print off these Fs, and I need to do this. It does take a person to do it. We have Autumn here who helps us with that. So, I mean, there's just a lot of unique things that we could be trying, and I think with HRS now and getting those frameworks into place and being really solution focused, we can take a lot of these services to the other high schools so they don't necessarily have to come here.
One of the things, Ann went through a lot of the different interventions that they're using in their building. What doesn't always work very well is when we have a one-size-fits-all model and we expect everybody to use it, and pulling people out of the building for multiple days and hours on end. So when we heard that feedback back from our teams, Chase and I just met with Laura Daly and her team, who put together 3 different in-services at 2 hours apiece with anybody that deals with any type of behavior academic intervention within their building. Invited them to go through different pieces of, here's the types of interventions, what type of data systems are we going to be looking at, what type of early warning systems can we look at, and how can we enter that data to then use that data to determine next decisions. So I think one of the things that Ann had mentioned are things that other buildings, it's best practice for other buildings to use as well. It's just getting that training incorporated within those teams. And I think we're on the right track, and we had great feedback back from our building teams. And we're trying to figure out what can we do at the spring, into the summer, and into the next school year, now that we know kind of that secret formula for what's going to work with those buildings. So.
Well, I think part of what I know Ann struggles with sometimes in that referral process, like the multiplicity aspect of this work, right? Like in one level, we're trying to put in, you know, what interventions have the buildings tried before they do that, right? But if Ann and Christina sit down and see a student that is struggling across the board and not finding any success, and the building maybe hasn't done some of the interventions we would like to see documented there, and we still have a kid at the end of that story, right, that's not having success. And so while we're trying to build up the system and improve tiers across the board and levels of intervention like Lucas is talking about, I know they still always have a soft spot for, but what's gonna happen to that student while we try to work on the system, right? And then, so that's where we get into, okay, well, who can we take? And Lucas is, you know, talking about how, you know, we try to work it out if we can, you know, with the team there, but it does become, you know, a capacity and need issue, and that's why that work is so important back in the whole comprehensive schools too, that we have to get those tiers of support built up. And I do think we've made progress in that, and even just having them document on the referral process is a step, but then of course it's training. I mean, Ann, you know, didn't spend a ton of time talking about, but the amount of training and PD her staff has been provided to do these things is also phenomenal, right? I mean, they do, and I had the opportunity to come down and watch them in the library once this year. I mean, it is a whole group effort, you know, as they talk about the interventions for the kids, and so they're all on the same page doing that work. It's just a different scaled out challenge to the rest of our schools.
And I'll brag on these two now, I promise. But things that happen at Tate can't solely happen at Tate. So we've been through the referral process, and like Christina will go and meet with the buildings, and you guys try this, let me come back to your building, let's talk through the student-specific situation that we're talking through. What can you do within your building so Tate's not the only option for kids? So, you know, they're doing great things by going back into the buildings by saying Tate's not the only place that this stuff can happen.
Yeah, right. So Matt, where is our training coming from for this?
Training for like the staff
Yeah, for the
members,
training you were
leaders.
just
Yeah, I mean, some of that's our own folks.
Okay.
You know, in our departments, and the people that Lucas was referencing would be some of the either PBS training we do or work we do with guidance staff, or training of the admin teams with support staff that we have. Sometimes it's these guys going out and talking to the other admin teams and learning from each other. So I think part of the challenge is, you know, what's the level of training that reaches the level of, you know, fidelity and implementation, that there's some of these things you can say you're doing them, but you're probably not doing them real well. And I think these guys would even say where they started on some of these interventions to where how they implement them today are completely different. But the where is basically from our team here in the district, right? We try to take best practice and teach each other.
Okay, good, thanks.
You talked about this a little bit, but just, can you talk a little bit about the stigma around Tate? You know, because for a lot of people, it's a punishment, or it's presented that way. And so how, I guess maybe where are we at with that, and have we grown? Where do we need to go?
I think we've grown. I do think that we've kind of cleaned up the perception of what Tate is in the community. I do think that just even wording, like you're gonna have to go to Tate now, that needs to change. There was one, so in the community, I don't know, because like, I remember one time, like at West High, I mean, it was probably 10 years ago, about 6 girls went off property at lunch, went off property, got in a fight, and came back, and thinking that was okay. I'm gonna leave property, I'll fight and come back. And when they came back, they got suspended for like 10 days. Well, most of them ended up coming to Tate, not because they got in a fight, but because after 2 weeks suspension, they ended up failing classes. And so they got referred, but people are like, hey, whatever happened to those girls that got in that fight? Oh, they went to Tate. And everybody just assumes it was because of the fight, but it was really because of their academic needs. So things like that get perpetuated, like, oh, they ended up at Tate. But I would say overall it's improving, and I think people see the need for this school and what we're doing. You know, our graduation rate, we had a parent, we do intake meetings with every parent, we explain how we can support them, and they're the ones, once they come on a tour, we say, come in the middle of the day, we will take you on a tour, and we do that. And a lot of people are like, yeah, I want my kid in this class, because they see the small classes, it's quiet, everything's good, but so I lost my thought, but so they come in and they're first like, we have to tell these parents, no, this is, once they see it, they're like, oh yeah, I want my kid to come here, and the kids feel better about being here. I think it's just the unknown of what to expect, and I heard it's just all bad kids, and it's really, yeah, it's
I
not.
think you were gonna tell us the graduation rate.
Oh, yeah, so then the graduation rate though, parents were like, I looked you up and your graduation rate, and we said, oh, I understand that, but we get seniors who are 2 years behind. So it's gonna take another year, but guess what, they graduated. So we are always behind the 8 ball. Our graduation rate, I mean, I think it's amazing for an alternative high school, but I know one year, the last time I looked it up, it was like 73% at like 5 years. At 4 years, it might have been at like 60%. If we get a kid that comes through here as a freshman, they're gonna graduate on time, you know? But it's the fact that we get juniors and seniors 2 years behind, 2-3 years behind, and then we still graduate them.
Can you kind of touch on the behavior and the trajectory of what happens with the students in discipline?
Yeah.
Once they come to Tate, does that change?
Yeah, well, we don't suspend, so when they're disrespectful, we utilize our SAC, Student Advisory Center, and we just explain that, like, this behavior is not acceptable, and they might be, well, F you, this is what I'm gonna do, like, every day, it's like, here they come again, like, I have a student now that she's just full of ACEs, those adverse childhood experiences, like, I think an adult walking up to her, asking her to change, I mean, she just is so vulgar with her language, and I'm not effing going to class right now. I said, yeah, and I'm just really quiet. I'll just stand there and go, well, unfortunately, yep, that's what you're gonna do. I try not to talk too much, and she's like, why are you in my face? And I hadn't moved, and I just said, no, you just need to keep going to class, do this, and it's only been a week, and now she's like going to class. So like, you just cannot let that initial behavior, I mean, obviously that worked for her in other schools, like F you, and I'm like, okay, I just need you to go to class now, or she would have gone to the SAC, and we talked about it, and so behavior does improve right away because we're all consistent, and we're gonna have that same expectation, and you need to go down there. And Autumn works really hard on relationships and just praising them, and the positive note cards that go home, and the tickets, always, hey, you're doing a great job.
And you don't suspend for any reason?
No, we do suspend. We don't suspend, like, we have vaping a lot, but we don't suspend for vaping unless it's been like 4 or 5 times. It's like, listen.
And then we even try to do like 2 days rather than like
And then we
5
only do
days.
2, like,
Yeah.
you can't.
Vaping's the
stop
bane of my existence.
Or, or they're swearing in my face, they end up down there, and it might be an in-school, I'm gonna bring all your work down here, I don't want you out in the community if you cannot be this respectful, so we might keep them in there, but if it's a pattern, like I've had them in several times, it's like, no, you're gonna stay home tomorrow, and actually they get mad, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, you just can't do that here.
And then we always try to have the parent come in too for like a reentry meeting, and not for vaping, but we make phone calls.
It's
or
just
try to
tough,
have
I
the
mean,
parents
only
involved.
to, really with the parents, just to explain what's happening.
Yeah.
Because at this point, they're almost worse at home. They're like, yeah, I know, my kid doesn't do anything, he doesn't. So it's not like we call home and say, hey, can you talk to your kid? No, they're not going to. It's really us and the kid, and we just try and work that out, so. I don't know, did that answer your question about behavior? We do suspend.
Yeah, well, you said you don't suspend.
We
I
have
didn't know
to,
what that meant.
for the
Okay.
district, for
Yeah.
fighting,
Yeah.
for fighting
That's what I
and drugs on property.
Right, okay,
But for like the vaping and the swearing at us,
Right.
it's like, well, no, we're not gonna do that.
okay.
So
The DIMD.
we try and teach them through that.
Kim, do we need to call a meeting to order for you?
Probably need to approve minutes.
Okay. Well, I'll call the meeting to order, and can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
And, okay, well, I know I want to be, careful of everybody's time, but I'm so pleased to be here and have everybody hear about Tate. I mean, you do so many great things here that we all need to know more about and figure out more ways to support Tate so you can, keep doing what you're doing, because my sense is you're doing it not with any excess, anything, right? And so I really respect and appreciate that.
Thank you. And you get our newsletters, right?
Yes.
Share those with everyone.
Yes, that's great.
And, I mean, I can say this here, but for sure the best graduation's here.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Every
yes.
year.
Oh, I was so pleased to be there last year. That was my first time.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the things that, we get to see that, right, but it's once a year, but to understand it's a community that builds to that. And that when kids and families have a lot of these extra obstacles, like, I think a lot of us, right, we take it for granted that kids are gonna graduate high school with a high graduation rate, but for some families, like, that's really a big deal, a big accomplishment. And so it's, I know, and that's probably something the board probably talks about more than just like the graduation at that time, like, let's take it.
I'm shocked every year, we still have students that this will be the first person in their family
Mhm.
to graduate.
Graduate high school.
Still
I'm
get
sure
those.
that's true.
Yeah.
Well,
The close-knit community really comes through.
Yeah.
We're at the Stream Arena this
I know, I
year, so
saw
it'll be
that.
interesting.
I know.
Oh, that will be interesting.
Yeah,
That'll be different.
well, so it's 1 o'clock on Saturday, so you guys are there Saturday, Sunday, 1 and 4, 1 and Saturday. 1 and 7.
Right.
So we'll see how that works out.
More parking for the anglers.
That is true.
They're really
shorter.
Yeah.
I mean, they are nice there. We've been going for the other high school,
Yeah.
and it's a great facility, but the Angler is so intimate.
Yes, yeah, informal.
Yes.
It would be nice, one positive is that they won't have to have tickets, like at the Angler, we have to
Oh,
have
that's
like,
right.
well, I mean, they can have as many tickets as they want, but we have tickets because there's 500 seats or whatever, yeah, so. Now they can just have everyone
Yeah,
come,
anyone they want.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.